Hi, thanks for joining me for our second LinkedIn live session between Genpact and senior technology leaders from some of the world's best known brands. I'm Riju Vashisht, Chief Transformation Officer at Genpact. And today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Nancy Flores, Executive Vice President, Chief Information and Technology Officer at McKesson. Nancy, it's my absolute pleasure to have you with us today.
Oh, hi, Raju. Nice to see you again, and so happy and humbled to be here. And thanks for asking me to join and share some of my perspectives and experiences. So happy to be here.
Okay, let's go ahead and have some fun. Our discussion today is going to center on women, technology, and healthcare. So, Nancy, according to a McKinsey study, 60% of employees entering the healthcare industry are women. And that to me is great news. But we don't see as much representation at senior levels. You've been in this industry for 20 plus years. What's kept you there? How have you dealt with challenges? And tell us, why aren't we seeing more senior women in healthcare and
Oh,
in technology roles in healthcare?
yeah, it's a great question, Raju. And I think when you look at the studies, a lot of what drives women towards healthcare, if you think about what we do, whether you're a mother, a daughter, or a sister, we take care of people. Many of us have families, many of us have parents that we care for. And so when you think of what drives a lot of women into healthcare, it's that care for somebody else. Traditionally, it's been mostly in more traditional roles like nursing in customer service or health administration. But more and more, you see a lot of women advancing their education and going more into physical therapy, doctors, et cetera, and executives. Why we don't have a lot of women in the advanced, in senior roles, I think it's just more the evolution of every industry. When you look at my generation, so Riju, you and I go back a long way. I have 35 plus years in the industry, so I am age is liberating. But you and I, and probably more me, we grew up in a generation where a lot of the back then, a lot of the roles for females, those were just evolving. And what's exciting about today is our daughters, my daughters, the younger generation has been given a huge opportunity to get an education, to advance, and have a huge possible, the world of opportunity based on what they want to do. And so I think what makes me optimistic is going forward in healthcare. Um, Today, the opportunities we had back then were very different compared to the opportunities women have today going into healthcare. And when you bring the personal passion of, a mother, a daughter, um, or a sister taking care of their family, and you combine that with science and engineering, which I know a lot of women are going into today, that makes you get up every morning and want to do a good job. That's a personal passion, and when you can tie your personal passion into something you do every day, that to me is very meaningful, and that's what gets you up in the morning. That's what gets me up in the morning, and that's why I've always loved healthcare.
So, Nancy, that's so wonderful. You're saying that if it's your calling in life, if it's a big personal passion, follow it and chase it. Having said that, what are your experiences with engineering and science, and how women can change some of their perspectives as they get into the corporate world and begin to climb the corporate ladder?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that, right? And I think as I've grown through my career, I think there are two basic principles that I've lived by, and I think they were actually my dad taught me that is get an education. Education gives you opportunity, and it's something that nobody can ever take care of you. Knowledge is power, and so to me, that's the first thing. And so find what you love to do. If you like engineering, if you like math, keep doing it. It might not be exactly what you want to do, but it gives you a world of opportunity. I think the second piece is, and I've learned this, is you will always walk into an environment, especially in engineering and science in the US. You'll be in environments where you might not, as a female, you might not be um, the majority in the room. You might actually, on some occasions, for myself, um, have been the only woman at that level or in that room. And I think the two things that I learned the most is um, be strong in confident in the fact that you were hired in that role because of what you know and because of your expertise. And sometimes when you're in a room by yourself and you're the only person that looks like you, it can be intimidating. But through experiences, what I've realized is oftentimes that's your own self esteem. Don't let that get in the way, because oftentimes what people see you in terms of your expertise, the role you play, you know what you're doing. So I think that's one of the things I learned. I think the last thing I've learned is don't be afraid to have a point of view. I think when you're in a room and you're trying to advance and work hard, a lot of us are perfectionists. A lot of us want to do the right thing. Sometimes that makes us think that maybe we shouldn't say anything. But you know what? Have a point of view. The best experiences I've had is where I've been able to bring forward a point of view or a recommendation. Sometimes not popular, but they were really important discussions that had to be had, and different decisions were made that benefited the company. So, I would tell you, don't be afraid. That what's the worst that can happen? You were wrong, so you adjust. And so those that would probably be the best advice I would give is don't be timid and put yourself out there. Have a little courage. So those are the two best advice I'd give.
Fantastic.
And
So
I
get
learned
an
some of that
education.
from you.
I'll give the compliment right back. So you're saying get an education, be fearless, don't be a perfectionist. The worst that can happen is that you're wrong, but so what? You at least stood for something. And you've often
Yes.
told me that there's a big power of network, and I've seen you use that. Any tips for our listeners about using the power of your network?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, you're part of the network. I believe as a leader, what advancing in your career to me, when I reflect back on my career and my experiences, um, they weren't because of what I did. They were actually because of what we did. And what I mean is the most powerful impact I've been able to make through my career has when we've had a broader cause to either support the company's goals, help a patient, make a difference. But it always required a group of people to get a common outcome, whether that's when I was at Abbott, we had to split the company, whether we were launching a product, whether we had to support a commercial business. Here at McKesson, I'm so proud and humbled to be part of the broader cause of distributing the vaccine for COVID globally. That's not because of me. That's been because of a group of people that, and many times they're smarter, more experienced than me. So, to me, the most important thing is understanding what problem has to be solved, and then leaning in on people that actually can make a difference or help. And when you think about it, we all need help at some point. So creating that network of people to help you provide a common cause, if it's the right thing to do, it's amazing how people can come together. And my goal is also is how I can help others. I've Riju, I'm older, age is liberating. 35 years of experiences. I at least have some experiences that I can say, hey, what about this? Did you think about this? Or yes, I can help you do this. And I think if you advance in your career and you focus on helping others and doing the right thing, ultimately that helps you, and you can reflect back on and really understand, you made a difference or you made an impact. And that to me is really important, making an impact to better somebody, help a patient, or help your company advance. I think those to me are the most rewarding experiences that I've had through my career.
So, power of collaboration, giving it back, and standing for a cause. And that cause could be distributing vaccine or doing it better for your company. So well said, Nancy. And I know that you've sort of brought this to your personal career. And we are going to talk about purpose later in this discussion, but you've set it up really nicely. Switching gears a little bit, when we think about women in technology, what would be your advice to women aspiring to be senior technology leaders, both inside and outside the healthcare industry?
Gosh, I think the one piece of advice I go back to, especially in the technology industry, is be fearless, be strong in your convictions. And if those convictions are tied to the passion of the difference you want to make for the company or the world, that's what's going to allow you to advance and blossom. I think when you go in and advance, you're you're equally as smart as anybody else. It's not about gender. How your style might be slightly different, but that's okay. The best advice somebody gave me was just be you. Be you. You're smart. You're educated. You were hired for a certain role, and put yourself out there. I think that's the best advice I can give. I think the other advice, we are in an industry where technology is changing so fast. I myself, I was educated on mainframes. I was educated on before mobile phones existed, before Facebook existed. So I'm in a role that technology that I actually didn't go to school for. So that's the second piece is stay up with the times. You might not have to be the expert, but to be aware of what's happening in the market, to be aware of the technology that's changing, that helps you be a visionary in terms of where you need to go, what could possibly be around the corner, and how you could actually apply that in your everyday job.
So be lifelong learners from mainframes to cloud, and adopt a mindset of being authentic and standing for what you know. Nancy, you've often talked about as a technology person, what you bring to the table is knowing your business and investing in knowing the business better. Do you have some examples of how that played out for you in terms of linking and connecting the dots between technology and business and being the voice in the room that brought it to light?
Yeah, I think one of the things I coach not only myself but my staff is, we and many times when you're in technology, you're supporting a product, you're supporting a customer experience, you're supporting the distribution of a product or the development of a product. And we oftentimes are the expert on the technology, but how you shape that, how you would change that is based on how somebody uses the tool or the solution or the technology. And I'm a big proponent of going out there, sitting with the customer, sitting with the patient, sitting with the business, and understanding how a sales rep uses their technology. And I will give you the best example. Back a few jobs ago, I had a big responsibility globally. India was $1 billion business that we had for pharmaceuticals. But how you developed tools for an India sales rep was very different than how you develop tools in the US for a sales rep. In the US, it's about prescriptions. It's about that interaction of dropping off prescriptions, leaving, having lunch with a doctor, having going out for a couple hours and having an education center. If you're in India, you go to a physician's office. There's a number of patients. They get 15-minute max. They get 30 seconds to see the doctor. And so there's a lot more around automation, around leaving educational tools that are much more valuable and drive that experience engagement in India than the type of tools we would use in the US. So that would be one example where the nuances of how a user or a customer uses the technology or uses the data is so fundamental to getting what I call that experience or that connection, to keep them coming back and driving value in the tools that we provide.
It's a fascinating example. It's a fascinating example of linking the user experience with the tool that you're thinking of and solving for a real business problem, versus a fancy technology that may not work in a particular context. And I know that sort of in your world and in your life as a technology professional, you've lived that. So it's a great example. It's very easy to relate to. And thanks for sharing that with us. Going back to what you raised a little bit earlier, which was all about what's your purpose and why are you doing something? Do you have passion around it? So at Genpact, we understand the value of purpose-driven leadership. We've talked about a relentless pursuit of a world that works better for people. But as you approach this in your personal life, in your professional life, how have you brought it to life? And would love for you to share a few anecdotes, examples, and life lessons with our audience.
Yeah, well, boy, that can take a long time, Raju, but I think you know a little bit of my story. And I would go back to 3 years ago. I went through a personal crisis, and before that, it was I had a family, I was married, I was raising my children, all personal passions, happy with that. But I was going through life, I would say mechanically, and then my world fell apart. I went through a divorce, was in a position that, while I worked hard, I don't know how passionate I was. I had left the healthcare industry, gone into industrial manufacturing to be closer to home. And what I realized is as I went through this life crisis, it really forced me every day to get up and understand what was most important to me, where I was making a difference. And that led me back into healthcare. That led me back into a leadership role, but not a leadership role about technology. What I realized is I love being in healthcare because we're making a big difference to the world in every single patient's life. But I think what I realized is as I've gotten older, my value in leadership isn't being the expert on the technology, isn't being the expert of how to drive transformation. It's actually coaching and teaching my leadership some of the wisdom that I've had and how to advance and help work together as a team, how to build the right culture to allow individuals to be empowered to solve problems on their own. So as I've grown over the years, I think some of those most critical moments in time where you think you're going through pain or life is tough, those are some of the most insightful times that really teach you about yourself and help you pivot to be a better person. And I look back, you nobody likes to go through pain, but actually it really there's so much truth to no pain, no gain. But once you come out of that pain and you really reflect on life, it really gets you grounded on what's important. At the end of the day, when you're reflecting on your life, I want to know I'm making a difference. I want to know that I have done something to this world in a positive way.
Nancy, so nice of you to share your personal story. As the world has been through so much pain in the last 18 months, a lot of our audience can relate to what you're saying. But coming out of this, understand your personal drivers, what gets you up in the morning, being passionate about it, giving back to society, being a coach versus a doer, and teaching people to fish. Fascinating lessons not only for women in leadership, but people in leadership and people who want to pursue careers in management. So thanks for sharing that story. I know you're going to say something.
Yeah, no, Riju, I just want to thank you. And I don't know that this audience knows that you and I have had a relationship for the last few years when we started working together. But to me, a lot of the respect, a lot of the lessons I've learned had also come from you and my admiration for you and your strength as leadership. I think we share a lot of the same philosophies of being authentic, of teaching people, of doing the right thing in this community. So I'm just so happy to be here and connect with you.
See, one of the reasons I love being with you is your view to innovation. And I know in your previous stints, both with Abbott as well as in your previous company, you've driven a lot of innovation, whether the innovation is about global mindset, thinking of problems differently. And I know this audience will benefit a lot by learning some of those life lessons from you. So, anything that you would like to share on that?
Yeah, it's funny. When you look at the world today, everything's about digital innovation, want to be innovative. And I call it the side hustle. You have to find the right side hustle. If you drive innovation everywhere, it becomes chaotic. And so one of the things I like to give guidance on is there are things when you're solving problems that really need discipline and mechanisms, and there's traditional ways to address them with Lean Six Sigma process, etc. And those are valuable. What's really important is finding what I call this side hustle, where you can take new technology or data and solve a problem a different way. And one of the most recent examples is at McKesson, we have a collaboration with Capital Factory, and they're kind of this forum that brings together corporations, startup companies. And we actually took new technology. We didn't know what problem we were trying to solve. We knew we had inefficiencies in the distribution center, but we applied this new technology. And from a video standpoint, without any human interaction, it identified inefficiencies in how the process was working. It identified opportunities of human training to drive more efficiencies. It had identified the most efficient worker and built suggestions around how other workers could be trained. That's one piece where it's finding that new technology. But the most important piece is when you believe with conviction that it can bring value. Because as I showed that, our CEO was all over it, but you also had the naysayers of that can't be true. That's not what we're trying to do. And I think when you drive innovation, it doesn't have to be on a big scale. It's on the small, most impactful things where you can actually make a difference. And when you drive it, you need to drive it with conviction. You need to drive it with a passion where every day you get up and you say, where are we? How do we get better? Because when you drive innovation, you're pushing against the current norm. And if you let the current norm and barriers challenge you, you won't get past the innovation. So to me, it doesn't have to be big, but you have to believe in it. You have to believe that it's going to change something, and you have to do it with conviction, as small or as large as it is. But typically, innovation starts small, and you get the momentum, and then it makes a difference.
Wow, so innovation is not about new and latest gizmos and technology. Innovation is about figuring out what's the right business problem to be solved, or what's the right problem to be solved, and using a combination of process, data, human change to drive innovation. It doesn't have to be big. We are not all
No.
chasing to get to space or get humans to space every day, but we solve day-to-day problems. And it is important for us to look at everything together and dial up or dial down the usage of these levers to drive outcomes. It's beautifully said.
Yes, and when you think about it, Riju, some of the biggest innovations started from a small individual personal passion. The impact ended up being larger. But when you go back and you look at Airbnb, or you look at Microsoft, or you look at some of the original innovation, it started with a few people trying to solve a problem for themselves. It ended up having a massive impact right to the world. But oftentimes an innovation starts in solving a very specific problem that isn't large at scale. So I think those are some really important areas to drive clarity around where you can make an impact.
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. Great discussion. And we covered three topics. First one was why healthcare. And as you said, there could be no better time to be in healthcare as experiences, technology, and healthcare at home come together. Women have more perspective to add, and therefore it's a fantastic time to grow women's careers in healthcare. The second one we spoke about was women in technology, and it was all about get an education, don't be scared of math, science, engineering. You could be the only voice in the room, don't be timid, stand for, have conviction. The worst is that you could go wrong. Use the power of your network and collaborate. And finally, around innovation, innovation is not about big tech or shiny new toys. It's about pulling together human experiences, understanding the right business problem to be solved, and using a combination of data, process, and technology. And start small. And don't be discouraged by the results that you get, because that's what are the momentum builders. Anything that you would want to add?
No, I think you covered it quite nicely. I'll have to go and reflect on that and make sure I'm doing those things. Yeah.
Nancy,
So,
it's been an absolute pleasure having you today. Loved your authenticity, loved your authentic lessons, and you sharing your personal stories. And that's what gets us going. And look forward to, and let's keep this discussion going. But look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you, and thanks to this
yes,
audience for
always
joining
good.
us today.
Yes, thank you. I
Go ahead.
appreciate that, and always good to see you, Riju, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you, Nancy, and thanks for joining us today.